Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. If you're new around here, I'm Uncle Reddit, and this is going to be r/ProRevenge. It's going to be a long one, kids, so buckle up. Maintenance guy at senior living center gets revenge on satellite TV companies. Over 200 plus residents emerge victorious. I'm the maintenance director at an independent senior living center. It's pretty much an apartment complex in which you have to be a senior citizen to reside. We provide 3 meals a day, housekeeping, activities, and several other amenities to increase the quality of life because, more times than not, they will spend the final years of their life here. Our facility is family owned and oriented. Family members of current employees are encouraged to apply for positions. We have one rule in our employee handbook: ensure resident safety, happiness, and prolongment of life. I take my job very seriously and take pride in it. I try to go above and beyond to make them all happy. Each resident during the daytime either listens to the radio, plays crossword puzzles, or most of the time watch their favorite TV shows. We do not provide television service. Each resident has to provide it themselves if they choose. Over the last year, there's been a trend of televisions not working in countless units, and when this happens, they're very upset. When I get a work order for a TV, I go and check it out. Most of the time, there's nothing I can do. If the cable isn't cut, everything is plugged in, and there is no obstruction to the satellite signal, it's going to be a software issue. When this happens, I install an air antenna until the regular service is fixed. I call the company and a tech comes out, fixes it, and usually within a couple hours it stops working again. This is a never-ending cycle of upset residents. Over the course of an entire year, I spoke with several supervisors and tried to schedule for someone to come out and go through the entire property with me to address each issue. They weren't having that. They wanted me to go to each individual unit and have that particular resident call them. This is almost impossible. A lot of them had trouble hearing and discussing complex matters over the telephone, let alone know the 4-digit code and the answer to the secret question. One resident was out of service for over 60 days, and I demanded that they refund or discount this particular resident properly. They ended up only giving her $21 off, which isn't even half of a single month's payment. When I spoke with this particular representative, I told them that wasn't enough and I would be throwing all their dishes in the dumpster. This is just the tip of the iceberg. These companies have caused significant property damage to the facility. They ran the coax in the gutters and down the downspouts, ran cables draped over the sidewalk, which is a tripping hazard, installed dishes in the center of courtyards and wherever is convenient for them. All over the property, cables are strung out on top of the grass for hundreds of feet. They don't bother to bury any cables. I've discussed this numerous times with the owner of the facility over the last year. The last time I spoke with him about it, he gave me the okay to handle the situation and do whatever needed to be done to fix the issue. My options were limited, and the only feasible option I could concoct was using a landline company that didn't need a satellite dish. Well, I have officially finished running new coax to every single unit, and a landline company has come in and installed boxes and services in each resident's apartment. Residents who have previously had to pay a monthly fee for their television service now get their service free of charge. Those that never had service now do. We have saved over 50 residents money every month, and all in total over 200 plus now have television service that is included in their rent without any increase whatsoever. This was revenge for the representative talking to Miss T in such a negative and rude tone. I couldn't be happier for my residents, and this is a picture of one example of how a cable was strung along the ground next to the building, loosely run up the side of the building, and drilled in through a storm window or a screen frame. It's just amazing. Our senior citizens are some of the most precious things we all enjoy. They hold all of our wisdom. Good day. Well, good for you, OP. It's really tough to find a facility these days for either the elderly or the disabled that really cares about its residents. I'm not saying that some people don't care, but overall, usually the system in place, whether it's corporate or government run, I don't care because they're both about the same. They're usually more worried about budgetary problems and things like that. So, good on you. You should always pay your accountant, especially if you've got skeletons in your closet. My buddy is an accountant. He has his own firm. His biggest clients are small to medium-sized businesses. Well, he had a client who owned 4 different clubs and bars in 2 different cities. The client was always shady, always slow on payments, etc. I was also a customer of one of the bars. They had poker games that I would play in on Thursdays. Well, one day I'm at my buddy's house, having a few beers, and he's bitching about non-payment from a client. I ask who. He doesn't want to say. But it's really bugging him because it's a significant chunk of change. He then says the name. We'll call him Scott. I'm like, wow, Scott isn't paying you? He then says Scott is saying business is way down and I think that's odd. I've been going to Scott's place and every Thursday is packed. My buddy looks at me and goes, "Really?" I go, "Yeah, he does this new cash discount thing, 15% off your tab if you pay cash." My buddy goes, "Really?" I tell him about my experience at Scott's bar, and eventually the topic changes. A few weeks later, my buddy calls me up and says, "You going to Scott's bar to play poker?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Can I join?" I say, "Sure." He joins. We get a few drinks in us, lose our money at poker. My house is closer, so he decides to crash there. On the way over, he breaks down his theory. He thinks Scott is vastly underreporting his revenue. The reason why he suspects Scott is offering cash discount is because cash is easier to hide. He says he's going to do a deep dive on Scott's finances. My friend tells me his plan is to go to all 4 of Scott's establishments, get the prices he charges at each place, piece together how much alcohol he's buying versus how much Scott is saying his revenue equates to. He looks up how much Scott is paying in payroll, rent, bills, etc. Keep in mind he has access to all this info. And he determines that Scott is basically using his credit card receipts plus a little bit of cash to cover his cost of his business, to include rent, payroll, insurance, liquor, food, etc. However, based upon the amount of products he's selling, he's suspecting Scott is underreporting his total income by about 35 to 40%. He goes back into Scott's books even more, and he figures in the last year Scott has been underreporting his sales by 35 to 40%, but he's also been underreporting his sales by at least 20 to 25% for years on end. Simply put, there's no way Scott is going through as much product and as much alcohol as he's purchasing and having the revenue numbers that he's claiming. He's underreporting his sales to his accountant, which means he's also underreporting his earnings to the IRS. By this point, Scott owes my friend thousands of dollars that he hasn't paid. He said his total amount owed could buy a brand new motorcycle. He never gave me an exact number. My friend decides, F getting repayment from Scott. Let's get repayment from the IRS through the whistleblower program. He's estimating Scott's underreported his revenue by millions of dollars over the course of years. The whistleblower fees he'd earned from the IRS far outweighs the amount Scott owes him. The IRS will pay between 15 and 30% of what they collect. So with the assistance of a lawyer, my friend gathers all the evidence he has about Scott's underreporting to the IRS and files a whistleblower report with the IRS. During this time, my friend fires Scott as a client for non-payment. Now this part gets boring because there's a lot of legal wrangling and back and forth. However, eventually the IRS comes down on Scott, and they come down hard. It's estimated that Scott underreported his income to the IRS by about $4.5 million. Now my friend never told me how much the IRS was able to recoup, but Scott's businesses are no longer his businesses, and $4.5 million would put the whistleblower reward at $675,000 to $1.3 million. Keep in mind it's based on what the IRS collects, not the amount that's reported. I've asked my friend how much he got in the end, and he simply says, "I no longer have a mortgage, and it would have been much cheaper for Scott to just pay me." Whoopsie! Yeah, never screw over the guy who's got all the information on your business. That's a bad idea. I mean, it's a bad idea to screw over business associates and friends and family anyway, but especially if they've got some dirt on you. Just not smart at all. Picture this. This happened 12 years ago, and I'm still reaping my rewards. I worked for the company. They did 3-phase photography, family and children photography, no wedding or events or anything. Straight studio work that was in a portable setting. Sittings booked for 10 minutes, and we were supposed to shoot 30 to 50 a day. Yes, it's as wretched of a job as it sounds. It was fast, high energy, and at times simply brutal. 1. Pre-seller. They come in 2 to 3 weeks in advance and sell a special 10 by 13 portrait and book the appointment. 2. The photographer, that's me in this instance, comes in for about a week and takes the pictures. 3. The salesperson returns 2 weeks later with a special, along with the other 6 poses I took, and tries to sell you $400 worth of pictures. I was very good at what I did. The company sales average was $100 per customer per 50 customers. The more you shoot, the lower your quality because you spend less time taking care of details, and details sell pictures. My average was 175-ish per 150 to 200 customers. I was making this company a lot of money, and they consistently treated me like crap. Oh, the stories. Their business model was shoot as many sittings as you can as fast as you can. To them, shooting 50 with a $100 average was better than shooting 35 with a $150 average, even though the profit margin was exactly the same. I never agreed with that, and boss and I went around and around about it every week. They withheld raises because I didn't have enough sittings and took my bonuses because I wasn't meeting their quotas. So I figured out how to be fast, efficient, and damn good. That's another post. So that's the background. Now the good stuff. Enter the jerk. The jerk is a pre-seller who lied to the customers, lied to the store, and would book appointments from 9 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. even though the studio hours were 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. He told every lie in the book, and I think he even added a few of his own. Want to bring your dog? Family of 15? Sure, bring 5 changes of clothes and I'll even have her do your makeup. I don't even do my own makeup. Come and get your picture taken and we'll throw in a free toaster. And just to make it interesting, he would triple and quadruple book appointments. And when he ran out of those, he would sell open appointments and tell people to just come in any time and my photographer will work you in. Just writing that makes me mad even after all these years. The biggest problem was he would waive the sitting fee, or just not tell them. I was obligated to collect that $8. Every time I didn't, it came out of my check. It was a freaking nightmare. I refused to work behind the jerk for these and 1,000 other reasons. I told the boss that if they ever put me behind the jerk again, I would quit, which is exactly what happened. They knew he had been working at the store I was assigned and they lied about it. I immediately called boss and told him this was my last week and that he needed to make arrangements to get the photography equipment at the end of the shoot. I should have walked out, but I was young and dumb. It was a 3-day shoot and I shot 316 customers by myself. That is an insane amount of sittings. And nobody was happy. Every night the store manager had to tell my customers to leave because the store was closed. People were lined up at 9 a.m. waiting for me. I took so much abuse that week. After a customer threw a shoe at me and another spit on my pizza, the store security guard brought a chair over and stayed with me almost the entire time I was there. I honestly can't remember how many people were escorted out of the store because they acted a fool in my studio. It's been over a decade and I still have nightmares about that week. But nobody came to get the equipment, so I start making phone calls and plotting. Me. Hey, what do you want me to do with your equipment? Boss. You're going to need it next week in Florida. Me. No, because I quit. Boss. You didn't give me any notice, so I'm not accepting your resignation. I'm sending you to Florida next week. Me. I'm an independent contractor, remember? You can't make me go to Florida. This is not complicated. I quit. And that's another post. Oh, I can't wait to read all these posts. Boss. Just go to Florida. I don't have time for this now. You can quit in 3 weeks if you can hire a replacement. And he hangs up. Nope. Not going to Florida. I packed the equipment and took it home with me. The camera was a brand new Canon T2i 550D, and those were pretty pricey back in 2010. I really didn't want to give it back, but it wasn't mine to keep. I had an idea. Boss was an absolute train wreck of a human. If he didn't want to do something, he wouldn't. If he could find someone else to do it, he would. I decided to use his own worst traits against him. Avoidance and procrastination. The next thing I did was take the company credit card and go to the nearest storage unit with climate control. I rented a unit and paid for the first month, but just one. I unloaded it all, down to the last halogen light bulb. I took detailed pictures of everything and an inventory. I locked the door and walked away. At this point, there was nothing I could do but wait and hope boss would continue to be the worthless wreck I knew him to be. Next, I called and reported the card stolen. Why? Because I knew if I didn't, that card would remain active and rent would be paid every month on time. And that just wasn't going to work for me. I cut it in half and sent it and the combination to the storage locker to boss via FedEx, along with a hand-painted sign that said, I quit. I also sent an email to HR telling them that I was terminating my contract and that boss had the information on the equipment. This is probably the only sketchy thing I did. The person I emailed was out on medical leave, and I knew it. I could have sent that email to a dozen other people who worked there, but they might have paid attention to it. By the time she got back to the office, she had so many emails she couldn't even begin to tackle them all. A month goes by and the police knock on my door. Okay, so I wasn't expecting that. The company has reported the equipment stolen, and the police are there to investigate. I really thought I was going to jail. The cop that knocked on the door was fully expecting to take me away in handcuffs until I explained what was going on. I ended up taking copies of the emails to the police department as well as my copy of the contract with the storage unit. I also had a copy of the shipping label. Both my name and the company were listed on the contract. I had to make an official statement and jump through some hoops. The company had placed a monetary value of $12,000 on the studio rig, so potentially I was in a lot of trouble, except I covered my ass. The police told me I was in the clear because the storage unit had their name on the contract, their credit card was used to pay for it, and I had sent the combination and all the pertinent information to the company. I'm very good at CYAWP. cover your ass with paper. At this point I figure the jig is up because surely they're going to come get this rig or send someone or something. Nope, boss is still worthless. 2 more months go by. I get a call from the storage facility. They're about to cut the lock and auction the contents. I just about peed my pants, I was so excited. I called boss again. He dodged my calls and ignored my emails to please call me immediately. I never specifically stated what I wanted to talk to him about, and just like I was hoping he would, he ignored me. Okie dokie, I've done all that I can. And that's when it all started to come together. And then I hit a pretty good snag, but it actually worked out better in the end. In this state, if a storage unit goes up for sale, the owner cannot purchase it at auction. I didn't know that. But where there's a will, there's a way. They sent letters and called 3 or more times, and then the date was set. The unit went up for auction on my birthday. My neighbor went to the sale. He bought the unit for $125. I almost died. And of course, we were in cahoots on this, but we had to make it look like we weren't. The pistol grip, the camera mounts cost more than that, not to mention the lighting, props, and costumes. And of course the camera. My neighbor then put an ad in the local paper for photography stuff, $1,000 firm, but didn't list anything specific, and oops, put the wrong number in the ad. A week later he wanted it out of his garage, so he sold it to me for $126. He has a bill of sale from the auction. I have a bill of sale from him. It's now mine and there's nothing the company can do about it, but they tried. I now have a fully functional photography studio, all the contracts I need to start my own business, and the skills to do it. I started calling all the stores I had worked for the last 8 years and offered them a much better deal than what the company was giving them. I did my own pre-selling, my own photography, and my own sales, except I took it a step further. I bought a monitor and computer and let people preview their pictures and order the day of the shoot. They paid in full and I mailed the pictures directly to them. People loved it. No high-pressure sales, no tricks. My customers were happy and so were my stores. About 6 months after my first independent shoot, I heard from the company. I got several nasty letters from them, which I ignored. Word had gotten back to them that I was using their equipment and that I was working for someone else. I just laughed at them. They thought so little of me that it never occurred to them that it was my business. Then I got a nasty legal letter from a lawyer. It started with cease and desist, rolled into me violating the non-competitors agreement, and ended with the return of their stolen property. They had apparently not told him all of the facts. I sent him copies of everything. I waited a few weeks for a response from him and heard nothing. I finally called to find out what was going on, but no one was available to take my call. How convenient. A few days later, I got a certified letter in the mail saying no other legal action will be forthcoming from this office. I would have been content to just let it slide, but this whole thing ticked me off and now I wanted blood. I made a real effort to really hurt them. Little by little, I built my business and my reputation. I didn't have to do any of the nasty tricks that the jerk did. Within a year, I had stores and schools calling me. I had more work than I could handle on my own, so I took on a second photographer, then a third. I actually hired 4 people out from under their noses. At the height of my business, I had 8 additional photographers and a full-time office assistant. I could have grown much larger, and in hindsight, I'm so glad I didn't. Digital photography was a huge boon to the industry, and then it backfired. I found my niche in the market just as it exploded. I ran the company completely out of 3 states. They lost all of their chain contracts to me, including the store where it all blew up. The jerk lost all of his stores and ended up working at a gas station. The boss ended up demoted because his district was dissolved when I sniped the contracts. The jerk actually tried to convince one of my photographers to hire him to do the pre-selling for her. By now my name and my business name had a really good reputation. Boss left the company for good and used me as a personal reference. He was a good photographer, just a rotten manager. And I took great joy in telling the people who called me that I was legally not allowed to tell them what I thought of the man. The age of the cell phone camera pretty much destroyed traditional photography, and I closed my doors as a business in late 2017. The company closed for good in 2016, and I would like to think I had a hand in that. I'm still standing, and they're nothing but an empty building. I still have the original rig, but the camera's been replaced several times. I do senior pictures and the occasional venue shoot. Most of my photography is for restaurant menus now. People ask me if that's boring. I've never had a meatball scream, cry, or kick me, which is pretty much a daily occurrence when you work with kids. This may not be as epic as some on here, but I beat them at their own game, and that still feels pretty damn good. Wow, what a story! OP, that is as epic as anything I've read on here. Not only did you get out of the business unscathed, but you beat them at their own game like you said, and came out of it with equipment, a whole setup, and a reputation, and a thriving business. And you still have a thriving business. It's just fantastic. Well, hey guys, I hope you like these stories, and if you did, do me a favor. Would you consider giving this video a thumbs up, maybe subscribe to the channel, and click that little bell icon so you don't miss the fat guy with the beard telling you stories. See ya!